Hello, this is Giovanni here at FrapTools for another live patching session. What you just heard is the result of the improvisation I am about to start. As always, I pick the 3 random techniques from our techniques archive on our website. You can do the same whenever you feel any kind of writer's block. And I will use these 3 to try and create a patch from scratch. So today we have the kick drum number 2, the percussion sounds number 2, and the force loop number 2. So we have 2 techniques for Fumana, and both use Fumana's modulation inputs to excite the bands and generate different percussion sounds. So we have a kick drum and we have other rhythmic texture. I never tried them both on Fumana. And to be fair, I would need 2 Fumanas for such a patch, but I have only one in this case, and I am sure I am not the only one having the need of a second Fumana, but this is what we have, and this is what we must use. And we have the force loop number 2, which is an interesting technique for Falistri. So we will use Falistri both as a kick drum generator in combination with Fumana, and as our oscillator. Now, since I had to patch my Fumana in this 84 HP system, I don't have any Usta sequencer. So I will need to get a sort of melody out of this setup here, and this will be the biggest challenge. Anyway, let's start. I'm gonna start by setting up the 2 percussion Fumana patches. So for the first technique, we are going to use the green generator from this Falistri to provide our tone, our kick drum tone. We're going to patch it through Fumana and through the all output from our CGM. This is our Falistri, quite easy. Now we are going to set all the sliders down and use this clock from Sapel, for example, to excite the band. Now, this is not exciting per se, pun not intended, but as soon as we take any of these envelopes here that we generate through Sapel's clock and patch it to Falistri's volt per octave input, we're gonna modulate its pitch and provide a sharper tone, a sharper attack for our kick drum. Now we can saturate the CGM like this and get a fatter tone. We can even emphasize the low end a little bit, and we can play with slower envelopes or faster ones. I think that this range sounds the best. So this was the first technique. Now the second one was fairly similar, but instead of using this cross-patching with Falistri, we used Sapel's noise, either white, now we need to adjust the levels, or pink, which is interesting per se, but we need to figure out how to fit these 2 techniques with a single Fumana, since we have only one, so to speak. But we are fairly lucky because Fumana allows us to split the odd and the even bands and use them as 2 independent 8-band spectral editors. Now, of course, we will have a lower resolution, so to speak, but I think that we can come up with some interesting tones nonetheless. So I'm gonna set up the Falistri patch. I'm gonna go back to my patch, and I think I'm gonna use the kick drum. Oh, so I need to adjust the levels back. Okay, so I think I'm gonna. We can listen to which sounds better. This one or this one, and I think that this is what we need because we have this super low end which is excellent for a punchy bass. And so we will use the noise in our odd input, like this. It sounds okay. Now we may need to use two different modulations so that we can animate even more our patch. So now we have plenty of options, and I think that we may use a fast clock for the noise part, which we can further emphasize here. And we can then use a division of this clock for the kick drum. So something that we can do, for instance, is duplicating the clock through our 333 here and patch the first one to the even input so that we will modulate the even bands. And for example, we can assign this one to our first clock divider and see what happens if we patch this here. Now you may notice that the kick drum is going twice as fast because this is a gate, and so every change, every abrupt transition from low to high or high to low is exciting these bands. Now this is a trig, so we have only one excitement, but here we have here we excite the bands both when the gate is going up and when it's going down. So we can route it through our other Sapel clock and have a more proper division. Oh, sorry, was this one? So by accident I passed my clocks to the gate CV input, which was set to external gate sampling. So basically I wasn't overriding the clock, but instead I was using my external time impulses to sample more values through the sample and hold circuit on top of the internal clock. It was like if I was using the manual button. This is an option. Or we can take advantage of the random clock, play with the fluctuating random to get some randomized clock in less than mode. Emphasize a little bit of low end. And use this one. Now we can play with the decay or a dry or wet sound, add some emphasis, combine the spectral transfer with the slider position. Now in the technique called percussion sound number 2, we also used other kinds of trigs. For example, we use the FALISTRI's end of rise or the end of fall for a faster trig when set to LFO mode, but I think that today we're gonna stick with Sapel, which has a slightly longer trig, a couple of milliseconds, so it's gonna have a thicker sound. Now we can even use the two channels separately, so we can patch the odd bands on one channel and the even bands on another one, and then use the channel in crossfade mode. This allows us to have more kick or more of these kind of snare sound, hi-hat sound. We can even use both, instead of using, where was that? This. We can even use both clocks in. We can use it in the random mode. Like this. And perhaps patch this. For a more frantic kind of rhythm. Anyway, we have to incorporate also our second technique, or our third technique, which was the force loop number 2. Now, in this technique here was fairly simple, but at the same time, it provides a very, very complex sound. And we're gonna need a complete falistri, but you can also use half of this technique, which is the foundation, and use just a spare one. Anyway, every falistri generator has this input here, which forces it is called the force loop input, and it forces the behavior from any of these two, with either transient or hold, to loop whenever it receives a gate high signal. For example, if I set this to if I set this falistri to hold mode and manually activate it through the button, and I patch the end of rise to this input here, I'm gonna make this oscillate by pushing a button. And if I set this to audio rate and patch this to my second CGM channel, I'm forcing it to oscillate. Now, if I do this at audio rate, for example, by patching a square wave coming from the brainsaw, you see that this is now an LFO, and as soon as it reaches audio rate, it creates this beautiful sweeping sound, which is a sort of hard sync, but in my opinion, it is even richer and very smooth. And we can also play with the Waveshape. In the technique, we expanded this and used either the end of rise or the end of fall, divided their frequency, and used it to trigger our yellow generator, which is set to transient mode, to provide a sort of flip sync as well. And then we blended it with the green one by setting the channel in crossfade mode, which is this. Or we can set it an octave lower even. For this very nasty and gritty sound. I like this the most. If we add a little bit of reverb, That's it. Now we have to make a patch out of it. First of all, I think that we can use an even slower clock. So I'm going to patch. Since the two generators are completely independent, I can break the semi-normalization and use it to further divide my kick drum and then use it for a steady pulse. So now I'm using half of this frequency divider to provide this tone. I don't have enough low end anyway. Probably like this. Okay, much better. And now, since we have these so many random voltages going on, we can use this one or any of these to modulate our FALISTRI. And then, since this is clocked by Brainson's green oscillator, we can even use our N+1, which makes our volt per octave signal, it outputs integer voltages, so it will translate into octaves when playing melodically. We can patch it to Brainson's volt per octave input, and this is going to be much slower than the yellow one. Can play with the probability distribution and make it change octave just every now and then. And then we have one spare FALISTRI that would be wasted anyway, so we are gonna set it to loop mode, slow time scale, Waveshape to the middle, and we're gonna use it as an LFO. I'm gonna patch this attenuated version to this input here, so we can use it to blend from this to this and have even more motion. And another thing that we can do is use the N+1 or any other, literally any other outputs are here, perhaps even the fluctuating one, to change this pitch. Try to saturate this channel. And I would love to add a little bit of sidechain here, but I don't have the 3-2-1 here, and it's kind of wasted since I no longer need this patch here, but I can try to saturate the group. By cranking it all the way up. And finally, I can try to add some motion by using the sample and hold, for example, to animate my high end, for example, by patching it here. Play with the wave shapes. Perhaps I can smooth this a little bit to avoid wider jumps with this oscillator here. There. Okay, I think that we can cap it here for today, and I hope you had a good time. If you want to share this patch as well, or if you want to share your approach towards this technique, feel free to do so by using the FrapIdeas hashtag. I hope you had fun, and I will see you next time.